Walk into any modern American grocery store, and you are greeted by an illusion of absolute abundance. The produce aisles are packed with bright, uniform fruits shipped from across the globe. But this modern system is not a cornucopia. It is a filter. Over the last century, the industrial supply chain quietly stripped away the most nutrient-dense, survival-grade foods native to the North American continent. These wild plants were not forgotten because they lacked flavor or nutritional value. They were erased simply because they could not survive a 1,000-mile ride in the back of a refrigerated commercial truck.
Today, we are bypassing that system. We are going to recover 5 forgotten native survival fruits that still grow wild across America. We are not just going to learn how to identify them, we are going to learn how older generations transformed them into preventative winter medicine and a hardcore survival ration capable of lasting 10 years without electricity. The first fruit on our list saved early American explorers from starvation and was famously George Washington's favorite dessert. So why have you never seen it on a single grocery store shelf? In September of 1806, the Lewis and Clark expedition was exhausted and dangerously low on rations. As they navigated through the American Midwest, they were saved from starvation not by hunting, but by a wild indigenous tree bearing heavy clusters of green fruit. That fruit was the American pawpaw. It is the largest edible fruit native to the United States. George Washington reportedly planted them at Mount Vernon and enjoyed them chilled as his favorite dessert.
If you slice one open, the flesh has the texture of thick custard and tastes like a cross between a banana, a mango, and a pineapple. It is a biological anomaly, a tropical-tasting fruit thriving right in the middle of temperate deciduous forests. So why is a native superfruit with a legendary history completely absent from modern commerce? The answer lies in the biology of the fruit itself. The pawpaw simply refuses to be industrialized. Once plucked from the branch, it has a shelf life of roughly 3 days before it begins to bruise and turn to mush. You cannot pick it unripe, stack it in a cardboard crate, load it onto an 18-wheeler, and let it sit under fluorescent grocery store lights for weeks. Industrial agriculture could not mold the pawpaw to fit its profit margins, so the system simply abandoned it in the woods. If you want to reclaim this food source, look along shaded riverbanks and deep ravines from late summer to early fall. You can easily recognize the tree by its massive, drooping leaves that look like they belong in a jungle. But this is where you must exercise strict discipline. Nature builds defenses around its most valuable resources. While the soft inner flesh is highly nutritious, the green skin and the large, dark seeds contain a defensive compound called annanasin, which is a known neurotoxin. If ingested, it will cause severe digestive and neurological illness. You never eat the skin, and you absolutely never swallow the seeds. The pawpaw was left behind because it perishes too quickly. But our second native fruit suffered a very different fate. It was not ignored. It was hijacked. Walk down the cold and flu aisle of any modern pharmacy in November, and you will see tiny bottles of dark syrup selling for $25 a piece. The medical industry has successfully conditioned us to view elderberry as a premium, laboratory-grade immune defense. They rely on the illusion that extracting its medicinal value requires a highly complex, sterile manufacturing process. It makes you wonder if it is merely a coincidence. We are trained to buy overpriced syrup in plastic bottles, while the exact plant it is made from grows aggressively along fence lines, creek beds, and highway ditches all across North America. Elderberry is not a modern pharmaceutical invention. It is one of the oldest and most effective viral defenses in the traditional American apothecary. But reclaiming this plant requires respecting a very strict law of nature. This is where blind foraging becomes dangerous. If you find a wild elderberry bush and decide to eat the raw berries straight from the branch, or if you carelessly brew a tea using the leaves and green stems, you will not boost your immune system. You will end up violently ill. The raw berries, seeds, and stems contain cyanogenic glycosides. When digested, your body converts those raw compounds directly into cyanide. Nature put a biological lock on this medicine. But older generations knew exactly how to pick that lock. The key is simply heat.
To reclaim this winter medicine safely, you must strip the dark, ripe berries completely free of all green stems and leaves. Then, you boil the berries in water for a strict 20 to 30 minutes. The sustained heat breaks down and evaporates the volatile toxic compounds, neutralizing the danger completely. Once boiled and strained, you are left with a dense, dark liquid packed with proven antiviral properties. Mix that warm liquid with raw local honey, and you have just built a potent, self-reliant winter medicine cabinet for mere pennies.
Elderberry provides the medicine to fight off a winter illness. But in a true historical crisis, medicine was not enough. You needed dense, imperishable calories. And that brings us to the third native fruit and the core technology of American survival. Walk down almost any suburban sidewalk or city park in early summer, and you will likely step on small, dark purple berries crushed into the concrete. Modern city planners plant the serviceberry, also known as the Saskatoon berry, strictly as ornamental landscaping. We walk right past them, completely blind to the fact that we are crushing the core ingredient of the greatest survival ration in North American history. To the indigenous tribes of the Northern Plains and the early frontiersmen, the serviceberry was not scenery. It was the biological catalyst for a hardcore, imperishable food source known as pemmican. Modern survivalists often misunderstand pemmican, treating it like a simple fruit and meat bar. It is not a snack. It is an engineered biological technology designed to keep humans alive through brutal, sub-zero winters when no fresh game could be found. The recipe relies on a precise triad of ingredients. First, you take highly lean game meat, like venison or beef, and dry it until it is brittle enough to be pulverized into a fine powder. Second, you crush in deeply dehydrated serviceberries, which provide crucial winter vitamins and a tart energy boost. But the third ingredient is the master key: rendered tallow. When you pour hot, liquefied animal fat over the dry meat and berry dust, something profound happens. The fat encases every single microscopic particle, creating an absolute oxygen barrier. In plain language, by eliminating all oxygen and moisture, you create an environment where the bacteria responsible for rotting simply cannot exist. When stored in a cool, dark place, a block of pemmican can remain safely edible for up to 10 years without a single watt of electricity. It is the ultimate off-grid calorie bank. However, when modern people try to reclaim this skill today, they often make a catastrophic, life-threatening mistake. They get impatient. They use fat that has not been properly rendered, or they leave a tiny amount of moisture in the dried meat. In the world of long-term preservation, moisture is a deadly enemy. If even a drop of water gets trapped beneath that airtight fat barrier, it creates the perfect anaerobic breeding ground for botulism. To do this safely, the fat must be slowly boiled down until all water evaporates and it becomes a pure, clear, golden oil. The meat and berries must be dried until they shatter like glass. Pemmican requires you to build a fortress against the winter elements. But our fourth native fruit teaches a very different survival lesson. It teaches you how to let the freezing destruction of winter do the heavy lifting for you. Winter is often viewed as a season of starvation, a time when the land goes dormant and the canopy turns skeletal. But if you look closely at the barren, leafless tree lines of the American East and Midwest in late November, you might see small, pale orange globes hanging stubbornly from the branches. This is the American persimmon. To the uneducated eye, finding fresh fruit as the snow begins to fall seems like a stroke of luck. But if an impatient forager pulls a persimmon off the branch in early September and takes a bite, they will instantly regret it. The unripe flesh is loaded with tannins, a highly astringent chemical compound. It will violently dry out your mouth, making it feel like it is stuffed with cotton, leaving you almost unable to speak or swallow. This is not a defect, it is a biological defense mechanism. The tree is aggressively guarding its calories until its seeds are fully mature. Older generations understood that to unlock this survival asset, you do not use force, you use patience. You wait for the first deep frost. When the bone-chilling cold finally hits, the freezing temperatures act as a biological switch. The cold physically ruptures the cell walls inside the fruit, completely dismantling the bitter tannins. What was entirely inedible just a week prior collapses into a dense, jelly-like pouch of pure, concentrated sugar and vital vitamin C. It is a profound survival lesson. True resilience is not always about fighting the elements.
Sometimes it is about having the discipline to let the harshest weather do the heavy lifting for you. The persimmon teaches us the value of respecting nature's timeline. But our fifth and final fruit reveals what happens when the modern agricultural industry refuses to wait and decides to steal a genetic legacy instead. When you buy a plastic clamshell of giant, bright red strawberries at the grocery store, you expect a profound burst of flavor. Instead, you usually bite into a watery, hollow imitation that tastes like cardboard. This is not an accident of nature.
It is a calculated industrial design. The modern supermarket strawberry was not bred for dense nutrition or flavor. It was bred to be durable, to resist bruising, and to look visually perfect after sitting in a warehouse for a week. But what the agricultural industry rarely admits is that to build this durable clone, they hijacked the genetics of a fierce native survivor, the North American wild strawberry, scientifically known as Fragaria virginiana. They took a plant perfectly adapted to the harsh American landscape, crossbred it from massive size, and completely bred the soul out of it. But the original wild genetics are still here, and reclaiming them is one of the easiest acts of self-reliance you can take right in your own yard. You do not need a pampered, heavily fertilized garden bed to grow wild strawberries. Fragaria virginiana is a resilient, aggressive survivor. It actively thrives in poor, rocky soil. Instead of fighting to maintain a useless grass lawn, you can plant these wild runners as a living, edible ground cover. The berries it produces will be tiny, often no bigger than your fingernail.
But a single wild berry contains an explosive concentration of raw vitamin C and intense flavor that the giant, watery supermarket clones could never replicate. You do not have to accept the industrial imitation. You can simply plant the original.
Leave a comment below with a native wild plant or an old family foraging practice that you think should not disappear. Share this video with someone who respects the old ways, and subscribe to Reclaimed Nature. Because every week we recover one more piece of forgotten survival wisdom before it fades away entirely.